Good afternoon, everyone. This is the flipped review lesson on algebra. This video is lengthy because it contains multiple examples, so feel free to pause and rewind as often as you need to. First, let's talk about what this video is going to include. It will have 4 parts in it: vocabulary, what it is, 1-step equations on how to solve them, which is review, and 2-step equations. Let's look at the vocabulary. Look at this equation. 3p plus 2p plus 7 equals 21. The 3 terms that we're going to talk about are coefficient, variable, and constant. The 3 and 2 are the numbers in front of those letters. Those are my coefficients. The variables, I have 2 of them here, but they are the same letter. That is p. And I have 2 constants, which are numbers not associated with the variable. They include 7 and 21. Here's a review of 6th grade algebra when you learn how to solve 1-step equations and how and why they work. First, let's look at what algebra actually is. Algebra is a way to calculate an unknown number based on a set of steps and procedures. The goal in calculating the value of an unknown number is by what we call isolating the variable. This requires you to know inverse operations. You can isolate a variable in questions that use integers, fractions, and decimals. Here's a review from last year. In my equation, I had 4y equals 29. Notice that the 4 and the y are side by side. This means multiply. To get rid of that, I need to divide. I divide by the same number, which is where the 4 came from on each side. 4 divided by 4 equals 1y, which can also be just expressed with y. And 29 divided by 4 reduces to 7 and 1/4 because 4 goes in 29 one time with 1 left over. Here's another example. In this one, I have 3/4 times f equals 25. To isolate the variable, I need to multiply 3/4 by its reciprocal, which is 4/3. The goal, though, is that you have to apply this to both sides of the equal sign, which is why I have 4/3 written over here and over here. This would multiply to 12 over 12, which then reduces to 1f, or just f by itself. And over here, 25 times 4 equals 100. And remember, that's like saying 25 over 1. That's how you write a whole number as a fraction. 1 times 3 is 3. So my answer is 100 over 3, which simplifies to 33 and 1/3. Here's another example. 25 hundredths t equals $2.25 if I wanted to use this as money. I divide each side by 25 hundredths. When I do that, the 25 hundredths cancels each other out, leaving me with t. And 0.25 goes into 2.259 times. Or I could look at it as 9 quarters, fit into $2.25, or I can say 25 hundredths fits inside 2 and 25 hundredths, a total of 9 times. Here is what is expected of you this year. You will find solutions to questions, to problems, that requires you to either simplify an expression or solve for a variable. Here's what all that looks like. Here's an example of using an expression. Again, in an expression, the only thing you can do with them is to simplify or rewrite them. You can't solve for the variable because you don't have enough information. This question is asking, what is the length and width of the following rectangle? Okay, the area of these rectangles, or the smaller ones, have been given to you. This one's 2a, this one's 4b. So what can you even do with that? Well, this is how you can work with this. I rewrote it here. The rectangle's information is given as area. If you were to use the distributive property, you can find a solution. The greatest common factor of 2 and 4 is 2. If I were to divide both terms 2a and 4b by 2, I end up with 2 over here and a plus 2b here. Then I can say that, excuse me, the length is a plus 2b and my width is 2. I don't need to know what a and b equal. All I needed to use was the distributive property to get an answer. Here's another example. A rectangle is twice as long as it is wide. Write an expression to calculate its area and perimeter. In this example, I have drawn out a rectangle with w's representing width and 2w representing length because it said it was twice. Area, remember, is the inside of a rectangle, and I would multiply w times 2w, which equals 2w squared, or 2 times w to the second power. My perimeter over here would be w, 2w, but I need to figure out what would go there and there. To do that, I need to figure out how many w's I actually end up having. So I'm going to go back and I'm going to rewrite w and 2w here. So my expression is going to look something like this. W plus 2w plus w plus 2w. Well, that would be like saying 1 plus 2 plus 1 plus 2, which equals 6. So my perimeter is 6w, which now is on there. And again, anyway, you can see it. Here's another example. An equilateral triangle has a perimeter of 6x plus 15. What is the length of its side? First of all, remember that equilateral triangles means that all three sides are the same. So if it has a perimeter of 6w plus 15, that's saying that the entire length all added together equals that expression. And since the triangle has three sides, I am going to divide both terms by 3. That gives me 2x plus 5, because 6 divided by 3 equals 2, and 15 divided by 3 equals 5. All varieties of cookie boxes cost $3.50. A person buys both peanut butter and chocolate chip cookies. Write an expression that shows the total cost. I'm going to use the variables of t and p. T equals total cost, P represents peanut butter, and C represents chocolate chip. I'm going to rewrite that here so I don't get confused. T equals total cost, P equals peanut butter, C equals chocolate chip. I know that excuse me, the cookies are $3.50 each per package. This has more than one acceptable way to write the expression. In my first one, I have T equals 350P plus 350C. I'm applying the coefficient as $3.50 times P, which is however many boxes I have. Also down here, I have 350 and then in parentheses P plus C, because I can combine them, even though it looks like I can't, because these letters are different. I can combine them because they were the same cost. Here's another example. Jamie and Ted are working a job that pays $9 an hour. Ted also earned $27 in overtime pay. Write an expression that shows the total pay Jamie and Ted earned. Use J for Jamie and T for Ted. There are multiple solutions on this, and all of them would be right. The first one is 9J plus 9T plus 27. 9 times Jamie, because J represented however many hours Jamie worked, plus 9 times T plus 27. Another example would be 9 times the quantity J plus T plus 27. And yet a third way to express this would be 9J plus the quantity 9T plus 27. In this example, I'm applying the 27 only to Ted, but the sum of all of this is still going to give me the value of how much they all earn together. Let's shift gears and look at equations. First, let's look at the skills needed. In this example, 2x plus 11 equals 52. My first job is to get rid of the constant. I'm going to subtract 11 or add negative 11. Adding negative makes more sense in the long run. So I eliminated that here and it came up with the equation of 2x equals 41. I then divided each side by 2 because that was the coefficient of x over here. And 41 divided by 2 equals 20 and 1/2. Here's another example. 2/3 times x minus 4 equals negative 16. To get rid of that negative 4, I'm going to add 4. That left me with 2/3 x equals negative 12 because negative 16 plus 4 equals negative 12. I then multiply both sides by the reciprocal of the coefficient of x, which was 2/3. The reciprocal of 2/3 is 3/2. I apply that to both sides. That leaves x by itself. And negative 12 times 3 equals negative 36 divided by 2. Negative 36 divided by 2 gives me a final answer of negative 18. Here's another example where the equal is added to the other side. $26 equals 14 3/10 plus 10x. My first job is to eliminate the 14 3/10 by adding its negative. That left me with 11 7/10 equals 10x. I then divided each side by 10 because 10 is the coefficient of x here. And that left me with a final solution of 1 17/100. In this example, x plus 3 equals negative 5. But in the example, negative 2 was written underneath x plus 3. I'm going to treat that as a fraction. To do that, I need to multiply this side by the reciprocal of that negative 2. That negative 2 is kind of like a fraction. So the reciprocal of that is by flipping it, which is where the negative 2 here came from. That got rid of the negative 2, leaving me with just x plus 3. And negative 5 times negative 2 gave me positive 10. I then need to get rid of the constant by adding its negative. That got rid of that 3, leaving me with x by itself, and 10 plus negative 3 equals 7. How to use this? Here are some word problems to go with all of it. A youth group goes to the state fair. The trip costs $52. In this price is $11 for a concert pass and 2 passes, one for rides and one for games. Each pass costs the same. How much is each pass? Here's how I set up that equation. 2p plus 11 equals 52. The p stands for pass. I bought 2 of them. I spent $11 on the concert ticket. It equaled 52 cents. I'm going to add negative 11 to get rid of that constant, leaving me with 2p equals 41. I then divide both sides by 2 because 2 was the coefficient of p. 41 divided by 2 equals $20.50. Here's another example. Amy had $26 to spend on school supplies. After buying 10 pens, she had $14.30 left. If each pen is the same price, how much is each pen? My equation is 10p plus $14.30 equals $26. My first job is to get rid of the constant by adding negative 14 and 30 on both sides. That left me with 10p equals, after I finished my subtraction, $11.70. I then divide each side by 10 because that was the coefficient of p. That leaves me with an answer that p equals $1.17. Here's a completely different example. The question is, the sum of 3 consecutive even numbers is 48. What is the smallest of these numbers? To set this up, watch how I do it. N equals number, I'm going to say n plus n plus 2 plus n plus 4. I got 2 and 4 because they are consecutive even numbers after 0. I then finalize the equation as 3n plus 6 equals 48. That came from adding my 3 n's together and adding 2 and 4 together. To solve, I'm going to add negative 6 to both sides, which left me with 3n equals 42. I then divide each side by 3, n equals 14. The sum of 5 consecutive integers is 50. What is the smallest integer? I'm going to use I to equal integer. Here's my equation. I plus I plus 1 plus I plus 2 plus I plus 3 plus I plus 4, because it was 5 consecutive integers, equals 50. My final equation ended up being 5i plus 10 equals 50. That came from adding my like terms together. There were 5 i's, and then 2 plus 3 plus 4 plus 1 equals 10. Then I add negative 10 to both sides, leaving me with 5i equals 40. I then divided both sides by 5 because 5 was the coefficient of that variable I. 40 divided by 5 equaled 8. Another example. An isosceles triangle has a perimeter of 60 units. The congruent sides are equal to g plus 6. What is the length of each side? Remember, an isosceles triangle has 2 congruent sides. Notice how I drew it out. I have 2 congruent sides. I labeled each one as g plus 6, g plus 6. And my final one, I'm just labeling it as g. That gives me the equation of 2 times the quantity g plus 6 plus g equals 60. I then applied the distributive property to that 2. That left me with 2g plus 12 plus g equals 60. Combining like terms, I ended up with the final equation of 3g plus 12 equals 60. That came from adding these g's together, and the 12 couldn't be added to anything. Then I added negative 12 to both sides, which left me 3g equals 48. I then divided each side by 3 because that was the coefficient. 48 divided by 3 equals 16. Here are some word problems. What I would like for you to do is to pause at the beginning of each word problem, hit play, and then you'll get the answer. Now in this example, it's already done for you. This equation shows how the total cost of visiting the History Museum as a member is related to the number of visits. C equals 13.5v plus 24.3. The variable v represents the number of visits to the History Museum, and the variable c represents the total cost of these visits. What is the maximum number of visits a member of the History Museum can make for a total cost of $64.80? My equation ended up being $64.80 equals 13.5v plus 24.3. Again, the first step I have to do is to add negative 24 3/10. That left me with the equation of 13 5/10 times v equals 40 5/10. I then divide each side by 13 5/10 because that was the coefficient of the variable v, and 40 5/10 divided by 13 5/10 equals the whole number 3. This equation shows how the number of eggs that Kirk has left is related to the number of quiches that he prepares. R equals negative 6q plus 90. The variable q represents the number of quiches Kirk has prepared, and the variable r represents the number of eggs remaining. At most, how many quiches can Kirk prepare if he needs to have 54 eggs left? Pause, solve, and then check your answer. As you can see, my equation was 54 equals negative 6q plus 90. I added the inverse of 90, which is negative 90. That left me with negative 6q equals negative 36. I divided each side by negative 6 because that was the coefficient. Two negative numbers divided by each other equals a positive answer. That's how I ended up with 6q. Marlon's retirement party costs $7 plus an additional $1 for each guest he invites. What is the maximum number of guests he can afford to have if he spent $37? Pause, solve, and check. A sapling that started out 28 and 5200 inches tall to 2 and 2100 inches per year. How old was the sapling when it was 83 and 77 hundredths tall? Pause, solve, and check. This equation shows how the number of salad plates that Lexi has left is related to the number of tables she has set. P equals negative 10t plus 100. The variable t represents the number of tables Lexi has set, and the variable p represents the number of salad plates remaining. How many tables does Lexi need to set in order to have just 30 salad plates left to distribute? Pause, solve, and check. See me with questions in class.